Welcome back. We begin with Iran, where Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei says the missile attacks on 2 U.S. bases in Iraq are a slap on the face of America. Addressing a ceremony in Qom, Khamenei said America brought instability and destruction in the region.
He said last night's military retaliation for the assassination of Qasem Soleimani is still not sufficient revenge. Iran's supreme leader said the corrupting presence of American forces in West Asia must come to an end immediately. Khamenei said Tehran is quite equipped in the face of bullying powers of the world. Meanwhile, President Hassan Rouhani said Iran's president says US may have cut off Soleimani's arm, but Iran will respond by cutting off its leg in the region. Iran state media claims at least 80 of what it calls American terrorists were killed in the attacks. Iranian Foreign Minister Javad Zarif said Tehran took proportionate measures for self-defense under Article 51 of the UN Charter. Zarif said Tehran does not want an escalation or war, but will defend itself against aggression. Earlier, the missile attack targeted an Al-Assad base in Anbar province and a base in Erbil, the capital of Kurdistan region. After the attack, President Donald Trump said an assessment of casualties and damage is underway and he will make a statement tomorrow. The Pentagon said Washington will take necessary measures to protect US personnel, partners, and allies in the region. US Secretary of Defense Mark Esper said Washington does not seek conflict but will respond forcefully if necessary.
In a related development, several NATO allies began pulling out their troops from Iraq after the US killing of Iranian commander in Baghdad last week. This follows Iraqi parliament's call for the withdrawal of foreign troops from the country. Germany says it is cutting its troop number at bases in Baghdad and Camp Taji due to the security situation. Canada says it is moving some 500 troops out of Iraq and sending them to Kuwait. NATO has already announced it would take some personnel out of Iraq because of the increased danger. The UK, Croatia, and Slovakia are also moving out some of their personnel based in Iraq. Meanwhile, in response to Iran's attack on US bases in Iraq, several governments are preparing for the evacuation of their citizens. Others have issued security advisories and diverted flights in the wake of today's developments.
Germany and the UK have strongly condemned the attack and voiced concerns over reports of casualties. Britain, Australia, and New Zealand have confirmed their troops are safe after the strikes. The UAE, Malaysia, Australia, and Ukraine have suspended their flight operations to Iran and Iraq. The Emirates Foreign Affairs Minister Anwar Gargash said it is essential the region pulls back from the growing tensions. Canada has decided to temporarily move parts of its forces in Iraq to Kuwait. Japan has urged governments to work on easing tensions and said it will collect intelligence to ensure its citizens' safety in the region. The Philippines is preparing to evacuate 1,600 Filipinos working in Iraq. Pakistan and India have issued travel warnings to their citizens in the country.
Prime Minister Imran Khan says Pakistan is ready to play its role for peace in the region. In a tweet, he said the country will not become a party to any conflict. The killing of a top Iranian commander in the Baghdad airstrike last week has stoked concerns about a major conflict in the Middle East. Being an important stakeholder in the region, Pakistan has urged both the sides to exercise restraint and resolve the issue diplomatically. Prime Minister Imran Khan has asked Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi to visit Iran, Saudi Arabia, and the United States to convey Islamabad's stance. Meanwhile, US Secretary of Defense Mark Esper called up Army Chief General Qamar Javed Bajwa and discussed the regional situation. Esper said the US does not want to seek conflict but will respond forcefully if necessary. General Bajwa called for de-escalation and said Pakistan Army will support all initiatives to bring peace to the region. He added that Pakistan will continue to play its role to facilitate the Afghan peace process. In Britain, Prime Minister Boris Johnson says the 2015 nuclear deal is the best way to stop Iran from developing a nuclear weapon. Speaking in Parliament, Johnson said he hopes the crisis in Middle East will end soon. On Sunday, Iran said it will no longer abide by any of the restrictions imposed by the deal after a U.S. airstrike in Baghdad killed its top commander. Earlier, U.S. President Donald Trump said Iran will never become a nuclear power. Major global airlines have cancelled or rerouted flights to Iran and Iraq amid heightened tensions in the Middle East. This comes when the U.S. Federal Aviation Administration banned American carriers to fly over the region. Germany's Lufthansa, Dubai-based Emirates, China Airlines and Australia's Qantas were among those avoiding Iranian airspace. In a statement, Emirates Airlines said they are carefully monitoring the regional developments. A Ukraine International Airlines plane has crashed in Iran, killing all 176 people on board. Ukraine's embassy in Tehran said engine failure caused the crash and there was no link to terrorism. Iranian state media says the Boeing 737-800 jet crashed near Parand, a suburb southwest of capital Tehran. A spokesman for Iran's Road and Transportation Ministry said a fire struck one of its engines after takeoff from Imam Khomeini Airport. He said the pilot then lost control of the plane, sending it crashing into the ground. Meanwhile, Boeing says it is aware of media reports and gathering more information. Ukraine has said 82 Iranians, 63 Canadians, 3 Brits, 3 Germans, and 11 Ukrainians, including 9 crew, were on board. The U.S. says it will continue dialogue with North Korea until it fulfills its promise of complete denuclearization. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo made the statement following the leader Kim Jong-un's threat to showcase a new strategic weapon. Pompeo said there was a lot of talk about what the North might do at the end of the year, but nothing has happened yet. Meanwhile, North Korea's official newspaper urged self-reliance, calling it the core of frontal breakthrough against challenges. Last month, Pyongyang announced it had officially abandoned the denuclearization talks after the U.S. failed to comply with the agreed deadlines. In Istanbul, Turkey and Russia have inaugurated the Turk Stream pipeline, which will carry Russian natural gas to southern Europe through Turkey. At the inauguration ceremony, Russian President Vladimir Putin said the venture will benefit the entire Europe. The pipeline project, stretching 580 miles across the Black Sea, is part of Moscow's efforts to reduce shipments via Ukraine. Relations between Moscow and Kiev have deteriorated sharply since Russia annexed Crimea in 2014. 4 people have been killed in a car bombing near the Somali parliament building in the country's capital, Mogadishu. Police say a suicide car bomb targeted a security checkpoint. Rescue services said 10 others have been wounded in the attack. The Al-Qaeda-linked group Al-Shabaab has claimed responsibility for the blast. Last month, the group killed at least 85 people with a truck bombing in Mogadishu. In India, a dozen people have been injured after Prime Minister Narendra Modi's BJP workers beat students in Gujarat state. The victims were holding a peaceful protest against the mob attack on Jawaharlal National University in New Delhi. Police said BJP's student wing Akhil Bharatiya attacked the students. Meanwhile, protests against the attack continued in New Delhi, Hyderabad, Chennai, and other cities of India. The masked mob attacked the campus on Sunday night and tortured students, leaving 34 injured. 205 million workers from 10 Indian trade unions have gone on strike against the government's economic policies. The strike, named Bharat Bandh, meaning closing India, has been called in protest at disinvestment, privatization and labor reform plans. The trade unions have made 12-point demands related to minimum wage and social security, among others. The protesters have blocked main roads and railway tracks in some cities in West Bengal state. The Indian media says banking and transport systems have been hit by the nationwide strike. We have a lot more coming up right after this short break, so stay tuned. Welcome back. US-based research firm Eurasia Group has declared India as the fifth biggest geopolitical risk of 2020. The group's top 10 risks of the year list is considered one of the foremost geopolitical indicators among global investors. It said Prime Minister Narendra Modi has intensified communal and sectarian instability. The group said the government has also caused setbacks on foreign policy and economic fronts, and their impact will be felt in 2020. US-based business magazine Forbes has listed Pakistan among best under-the-radar places to visit in 2020. In its The Not Hot list, Forbes has outlined places that are off the beaten path and provide an escape from everyday life. Citing award-winning adventure travel company Wild Frontiers, the magazine writes Pakistan has become an increasingly attractive destination. It said with the royal visit of Duke and Duchess of Cambridge, the destination will continue to be one to watch. The magazine said Pakistan offers both history and stunning landscape in its north, where three greatest mountain ranges collide. It said the infrastructure with new roads, tunnels, and luxury hotels has also improved in recent years. U.S. Senate Republicans may press ahead with setting the rules for President Donald Trump's impeachment trial. Republican Senator Mitch McConnell said he is ready to ignore Democratic calls to assure witnesses can be called. McConnell said this majority caucus could pass a set of rules for the trial unilaterally. The Republican senator said the issue of witnesses and documents will be addressed later and not before the trial begins. He objected to House Speaker Nancy Pelosi withholding the articles of impeachment.
There's a rule of impeachment in the Senate that we must receive the papers. It continues to be my hope that the Speaker will send them on over. The House argued that this was an emergency. They needed to act quickly, that the President was such, apparently, from their point of view, such a danger to the country that they needed to really rush this through. And then they sat on the papers now for 3 weeks.
Meanwhile, in France, the longest transport strike in modern history has entered its 35th day today. French President Emmanuel Macron's pension reform plan triggered the mass reaction. Talks between the French government and unions aimed at ending the deadlock failed on Tuesday. Thousands of CGT workers have gone on strike at 7 of France's 8 oil refineries, as well as at ports including Le Havre. Transport operators have warned Paris metro services will be suspended due to a new day of mass walkouts on Thursday. The workers have rejected Macron's plan to replace 42 separate regimes with a single points-based pension system. Over 6,000 people have died by a measles outbreak in the Democratic Republic of Congo. The World Health Organization called it the world's largest and fastest moving epidemic. The WHO said over 300,000 suspected cases have been reported since the start of 2019. Congo's government and the WHO vaccinated over 18 million children under 5 last year. The UN agency said an extra $40 million were required to vaccinate children aged between 6 and 14 years. The measles outbreak in DR Congo has killed twice as many people as Ebola in the Central African country. As winter descends in Syria, makeshift camps and shelters have become an unlikely refuge for tens of thousands of Syrians fleeing the ongoing civil war in the country's northeast. The freezing winter weather has piled pressure on the already inadequate infrastructure for over 250,000 people. More in this report. Millions of displaced Syrians will spend a night bitterly cold winter in the unending Syrian crisis. And the situation is getting worse after increased bombardment by Syrian and Russian warplanes triggered a mass exodus in Idlib. Over 130 families live in Samir camp in northwestern Syria. All tell similarly sad stories of displacement from homes, fear of the biting cold, and lack of water, food, and electricity.
We need food. We need a lot of things like blankets, tents. Actually, we need everything. The cold
cold and rainfall is too much. We escaped here from Assad's bombing, but living here is more difficult than Assad's bombing. Winter is very difficult. We don't have firewood. Our tent was flooded. We find old shoes and pieces of clothes to warm up and burn them. We need everything here.
In the US, the annual technology fair, the Consumer Electronics Show, has kicked off in Las Vegas. The world's tech giants are joining in at the most important gathering of its kind in the world, showing off the future today. More about the CES 2020 in this report.
At the ongoing Consumer Electronics Show, there is no shortage of gadgets we didn't know we needed. From Intel's tiny PC to Hyundai's flying taxis and OnePlus disappearing cameras to the UB Tech Walker robot, the future is here and now, and seen by over 170,000 tech enthusiasts. At one of the many conferences at the show, US presidential advisor Ivanka Trump spoke on government-industry collaboration to create jobs. She received applause as she talked about technology's role in creating the workforce of the future.
I'm a big believer in innovation and the positive impact that productivity has on an economy and fighting for American dominance in the industries of the future.
Some industry officials, including women, challenged her tech qualifications and criticized her lack of relevant experience.
I think this is a professional show. I just think it was quiet.
I don't think she doesn't really seem like she has background to be speaking to tech community. So
the giant tech show will run till January the 10th.
Beijing says it will further deepen cooperation with Islamabad for greater development of China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. In a media briefing in Beijing, Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Geng Shuan said this will deliver more benefits to people of both states. He said an amended protocol to bilateral free trade agreement entered into force last month. Gang said the protocol upgrades and revises the contents of the original pact on market access and tariff reduction schedules. He said under the free trade upgrade between the two countries, almost 75% of all products will have zero trade tariffs. Oil prices have surged over 4% at their high in early trade after Iran launched ballistic missiles on U.S. military bases in Iraq. U.S. WTI crude oil spiked over 4.5%, its highest level since April. International benchmark Brent crude rose over 4%, touching nearly $72 per barrel, its highest since September. Shares of Elon Musk's auto giant Tesla have doubled in the past 3 months after its market value reached $84.5 billion. Tesla share price hit $470 threshold for the first time in history, jumping by 85% in just a few weeks. In 2019, Tesla delivered over 367,000 units, marking an increase by about 50% year-on-year. Tesla's market capital is only $2 billion less than General Motors and Ford Motor combined. The Wall Street stocks have opened at modest gains as investors recovered from a steep overnight decline. The indices of S&P 500, Dow Jones and Nasdaq Composite are trading fractionally higher. Boeing shares dropped after the crash of a Ukrainian aircraft in Iran. Oil prices slide about 1%. Now let's look at the weather from around the globe. This is all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at indus.news.